Okay, so you want to own a wedding venue. Buy a barn, string up some lights, rent it out on Saturdays on Sundays. That's the plan in your head, and it's not a bad plan. Look at any picturesque venue's calendar on a Saturday in October, and it looks like the easiest business in the world. Every weekend booked a year in advance. Couples paying $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 for a single night. You watch that number and you think, this place must be printing money. One event, one weekend, tens of thousands of dollars. Simple. Here's the problem. You are looking at the one day of the week that lies to you the most. The truth is that a wedding venue is not really an event space business. It is a seasonal capacity and deposit business that happens to have string lights in it. And the moment you understand that difference, everything about how a venue makes money and how it quietly loses money starts to make sense. Let's start with what it actually costs to get in the door, because the price tag is a lot more complicated than buy a barn and hang some lights. There isn't one type of wedding venue. There are several, and each one is really a different business wearing the same fairy lights. At the bottom end, you have the rustic budget venue, a converted barn or farm property, charging $2,000 to $6,000 for space rental alone, usually requiring couples to bring in their own caterer, bar service, and rentals. Above that sits the mid-tier banquet hall or event center, the kind with an in-house kitchen and a small staff, charging $5,000 to $15,000 and often bundling catering into the price. Above that, the luxury estate, or all-inclusive venue, which charges $15,000 to $50,000 or more and sells you a full production, catering, florals, coordination, lighting design, the works. And then there's the small, brutal category, the bare rental hall, a room with 4 walls and a bathroom that doesn't sell an experience at all. It sells square footage and a set of hours and nothing else. Each of these is a different bet on the same underlying question. Do you make your money from a high volume of simple bookings with thin margins per event, or a small number of high-touch weddings where you control every vendor and every markup? That single decision shapes every other number in the business. Now, here's where the naive mental model starts to break down. You think the expensive part is the property, the barn, the string lights. It isn't, not entirely. The expensive part is turning a pretty piece of land or an old building into something that can legally hold 200 people at once, feed them, and get them all safely to their cars afterward. Industry data on new venue launches puts total startup costs anywhere from $300,000 to $1.5 million once you include the property itself, and that's before you've hosted a single event. Renovation alone, structural repairs, flooring, lighting, HVAC commonly runs $50,000 to $250,000.
Kitchen equipment and furnishings, tables, chairs, linens, a warming kitchen if you're doing in-house catering can add another $100,000 to $170,000 on top of that. And then there's the part almost nobody budgets for correctly: parking, restrooms, and code compliance. A venue holding 150 to 200 guests needs parking for 75 to 100 cars, permanent or high-quality portable restroom facilities that meet ADA accessibility requirements, and in many jurisdictions, a backup generator sized to run lighting, sound, and climate control if the power goes out during a paid event, because the power went out is not an acceptable explanation to a couple who has been planning this day for 18 months. Licensing and permits, occupancy certificates, fire marshal sign-off, alcohol service permits typically run $5,000 to $20,000. And none of it is optional if you intend to legally hold events with alcohol and open flame, meaning candles and sparkler exits in the same room. Add the down payment or renovation loan, insurance, a cash reserve to survive your first off-season before referrals start rolling in, and a modest mid-size venue can require its full $300,000 to $1.5 million in startup capital before a single deposit check clears. So far, so good. Now let's talk about what can go wrong. Insurance is the next trap, and it's a bigger one than people expect, because a venue doesn't just need one policy, it needs several stacked on top of each other. General liability insurance, covering slip and fall injuries and property damage, is the baseline every venue needs to operate at all. Add liquor liability, because roughly 80% of commercial venues now require proof of liquor liability coverage before they'll let anyone pop a cork. And dram shop laws in most states mean the venue can be held partially liable if an intoxicated guest causes harm after leaving your property. A combined general and liquor liability policy for the venue itself typically runs $450 to $3,000 a year, depending on alcohol volume and claims history. And that's before you count the separate event cancellation and liability policies that couples are often required to purchase themselves, adding another $75 to $600 per wedding on top. Here's the decision that trips people up. Do you require every couple to carry their own event liability policy, or do you fold the risk into your own venue-wide umbrella and price it into the package? Requiring couples to insure themselves feels safer for the venue's bottom line. Small administrative cost, and the risk sits with the client. But it also creates friction at exactly the moment you're trying to close a booking. A couple mid-planning process suddenly being told they need to go buy a separate insurance policy before the venue will confirm their date. Folding it into your own coverage sounds smoother for the client experience, but your own umbrella liability policy premium climbs with every additional event you host and every guest count you allow, and a single serious claim, a fall on an unlit staircase, an alcohol-related injury in the parking lot, can be existential for a business your size, in a way it never would be for a large hotel chain with a legal department. Neither option is wrong, but whichever one you pick, you've just locked in a liability exposure that scales with your own success. More weddings, more guests, more risk, regardless of how careful you are. Now here's the part of this business that actually explains everything else: the deposit. Picture two couples who book the same Saturday in June, 14 months out. In one future, they show up, get married, pay their final balance, and the night goes off without a hitch. In the other future, they call 4 months later and cancel, for reasons that have nothing to do with the venue. Which of those two couples is more valuable to the venue? It's genuinely close, and that's exactly what makes this business different from the others. Because a wedding venue's real product isn't the building, it's the date. A Saturday in June can only be sold once, and once a couple locks it in with a non-refundable deposit, typically 25 to 50% of the total package price, that date is off the market for every other couple who might have wanted it, whether or not the wedding actually happens. If the couple cancels early enough, before the venue has spent real money on staffing, catering prep, or rentals for that date, the venue keeps the non-refundable deposit and, in many contracts, retains the right to resell the same date to someone else. A canceled wedding that gets rebooked can generate 2 non-refundable deposits for a single calendar date. This is precisely why venue contracts are written the way they are, and precisely why almost every serious venue requires a signed agreement with a non-refundable deposit before a date is considered held at all. The deposit isn't really a booking fee. It's the mechanism that converts a perishable, unsellable twice asset, a specific Saturday, into a guaranteed piece of revenue, regardless of what happens between the signature and the wedding day. There's a seasonal wrinkle to this whole picture that's worth walking through because it shapes the entire financial calendar of the venue. Roughly 76% of all U.S. weddings happen between May and October, with October alone accounting for around 16 to 17% of the year's total on its own, the single most popular wedding month in the country. January, by contrast, accounts for barely 2% of weddings nationwide. That means a venue's entire annual revenue is realistically generated across roughly 26 Saturdays, since most couples want a Saturday specifically concentrated into 6 months, while the other 6 months carry almost none of it. Experienced owners don't panic about this. They price aggressively for off-season dates, sometimes 30 to 50% below peak pricing, specifically to keep some revenue flowing through the dead months. And they build their entire cash reserve around the fact that January through March will barely cover the electric bill. The owners who get caught off guard are the ones who built their financial model assuming 12 months of peak season pricing, and then wonder why the venue is hemorrhaging cash every winter despite a fully booked summer and fall. There's also a structural choice sitting underneath all of this. Run an open venue where couples can bring any licensed vendor they want, or build a preferred vendor system, sometimes an exclusive one, where couples must choose from a curated list of caterers, florists, and DJs that the venue has pre-approved.
A preferred vendor list gives the venue quality control and often a referral fee or commission from vendors eager to be on it, sometimes 10 to 20% of the vendor's contract value flowing back to the venue. That's valuable, especially for a new venue trying to guarantee consistent quality without a proven in-house team. But it isn't free reputationally. Couples increasingly research and compare venues specifically on how restrictive their vendor policies are, and an exclusive list that feels like it's inflating prices for the venue's own benefit is one of the most common sources of negative reviews in this industry.
An open vendor venue keeps a simpler, more trust-based reputation. A preferred vendor venue is trading some goodwill for a real, recurring revenue stream, which can be worth it, but only if the commission income outweighs the bookings lost to couples who specifically wanted the freedom to choose. Now, here's where the psychology becomes just as important as the math. Why do couples routinely spend far more than they originally budgeted once they're sitting in a venue tour? Part of it is the setting itself. String lights, a perfectly staged reception hall, and a coordinator walking them through what most couples add creates a powerful sense of what the day is supposed to look like. Part of it is anchoring. The venue tour deliberately opens with the top-tier all-inclusive package first, so that the mid-tier package, the one most couples actually book, feels like the reasonable, restrained choice by comparison. And part of it is that a wedding happens exactly once, which strips away the normal price sensitivity people bring to almost every other purchase in their lives, because nobody wants to be the couple who cheaped out on their own wedding day. Venues design the physical tour to reinforce this, showing the space at golden hour, staged with a sample tablescape already set, rented florals still fresh, creates an emotional anchor that a bare, unstaged room never could, which is why serious venues invest in staging costs specifically for tour days, rather than showing the space as it actually sits between events. None of this is decoration. It's aimed at the same target, getting a couple to fall in love with a version of the day that costs more than the number they walked in with. Before we get to what can go wrong, there's a second layer of hidden cost that catches almost every first-time venue owner off guard, and it has nothing to do with the wedding itself. It's the noise ordinance. Nearly every municipality has some form of noise or sound ordinance, and outdoor or barn-style venues in particular routinely run into conflicts with neighboring properties over amplified music and a DJ running past a cutoff time. Violating a local noise ordinance can carry fines that range from a few $100s for a first offense up into the thousands for repeat violations. And in the worst cases, a pattern of noise complaints can jeopardize a venue's conditional use permit entirely, the same permit that allows it to legally operate as an event space rather than just a private residence. A venue owner who assumes a rural property means no real oversight has quietly taken on a risk that can end the business faster than almost anything else on this list. Because unlike a lawsuit, a revoked permit doesn't get negotiated down. It just ends the venue. That's a small example, but it points at the bigger lesson of this entire business. Almost none of the real costs are the ones printed on the pricing page couples see first. They're the ones buried in a zoning variance, an insurance rider, or a vendor contract that nobody reads carefully until something goes wrong. And plenty of things do go wrong. Outdoor venues in particular carry weather risk that indoor venues simply don't. And a serious venue budgets for a backup tent or indoor contingency space, which can run $5,000 to $15,000 to have on standby for a single wedding season. Landscaping, HVAC, and general property maintenance for a venue hosting 50 or more events a year run meaningfully higher than the same property used privately, often $2,000 to $6,000 a month depending on the size of the grounds. Now, let's talk about whether a wedding venue business built entirely on this deposit and date model can actually survive at scale. Because the honest answer is sometimes not, even at national scale, with thousands of loyal customers. Take Noah's Event Venue, a chain that at its peak operated 42 locations across 25 states, one of the largest wedding venue operators in the country. In 2020, the company abruptly closed every location and filed for bankruptcy, leaving roughly 7,500 couples with paid deposits and, in many cases, fully paid balances for weddings that would never happen. The couples were left as unsecured creditors in the bankruptcy proceeding, behind secured lenders, meaning most recovered pennies on the dollar, if anything at all, and often well after their wedding date had already passed. The pattern repeats at smaller scale constantly. Regional operators like the Art Factory in New Jersey and Circle B in Minnesota have followed the same script. Couples putting down five-figure deposits, the venue collapsing under debt it couldn't service, and the deposit money simply gone. The answer isn't that demand for weddings dried up. People kept getting engaged and kept wanting venues. The answer is structural. A business model built on collecting non-refundable deposits many months or years before delivering the actual service creates a dangerous incentive to keep selling dates even after the underlying finances have become unsustainable, because a deposit collected today solves this month's cash crunch, regardless of whether the venue will still exist on the wedding date 14 months from now. A venue with a calendar booked solid for the next 2 years can still be one missed loan payment away from collapse. And the booked calendar itself, the very thing that looks like proof of a healthy business, is often the last thing to reveal that trouble is coming, because the deposits keep arriving right up until the day the doors close.
So how does a wedding venue actually make money, in plain mechanical terms, once it's past all of this? The core engine is simple. Average package price times weddings per year minus fixed costs, with almost all of that multiplication happening inside a roughly 6-month window. If a venue has fixed annual operating costs, mortgage or rent, insurance, staff, utilities, maintenance of around $180,000, and it books an average package price of $9,000 per wedding, then it needs roughly 20 weddings a year just to clear its fixed costs, which means booking close to every single peak season Saturday available, because there simply aren't enough weekends in the calendar to make up for a slow season anywhere else.